Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and today my guest is Roy Stewart. Roy's been a longtime friend of mine, and we met back in 2006 when I was associate pastor at Northeast Christian Church in the Hamburg area of Lexington, Kentucky. And so he's been a good, trusted friend. I was fortunate enough just a couple months ago to do his wedding. So Roy's got a great story. Fortunately, he knows what it's like to lose a loved one because they lost hope and prematurely ended their life. And his brother Nathan ended his life a few years ago, yet he was a wonderful man, but he was really struggling. And Roy is his brother. He hurt because of that. And so we want to share a little bit about Nathan's life and encourage those that maybe have lost hope out there today to know that there is hope. And yet, Roy, first of all, just thanks for being on here today, man. I really appreciate you being a guest.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about your brother, Nathan. What kind of guy was he? What was he like growing up?
Nathan was always a very outdoorsy person. He loved hunting and fishing and going out and finding things out in nature. And he had a close friend in a lady that lived next door. She had a huge garden, and he was always interested in her plants and fruits and vegetables. And we would play ball in the backyard, and sometimes the ball would get knocked over into her garden, and he was the only one that she would let go into that garden because it was very crowded, and he would be careful not to damage anything when he retrieved the ball. But he was a great guy growing up, and he was very competitive, and he was a good Christian man. He was married twice and had 3 children of various ages, but he was very humble and honest, hardworking, one of those guys that give you the shirt off his back.
You know, over time, did you start to see maybe some changes in his personality or behavior near the end of his life, Roy?
Yeah, he had several things that was profoundly affecting his state of mind. There was an economic slowdown with his job. He was a food salesman, and they kept giving him worse and worse accounts and areas of town to cover, and he was viewing that as a demotion, and he was viewing that as kind of setting the stage for his dismissal. But that wasn't true at all. We found out later that he was one of the best salesmen, so they figured if anybody could breathe life into those accounts or that area of town, it was him. But he thought his job was in jeopardy. He had just bought a small farmhouse, and he had lots and lots of problems with the house, the electrical wiring, the plumbing, and some black mold in the basement. And he was being hammered by 2 ex-wives for child support, and he was trying desperately to meet his obligation to pay child support. And he got into a bad frame of mind. He got into that what I call circular negative thinking, and couldn't see or think outside the box, and he let his problems and these strong concerns overwhelm him.
Well, that's a lot, especially for anybody, but as a man, as you sit there and you feel like your job, maybe you're not being valued or respected, yet unfortunately the communication doesn't seem like it was really good there between him and his employer, them letting him know that actually it was a compliment to him. But, man, when you spend 40 or 50 hours a week at a job and you feel like you're not appreciated and things are going tough, it kind of puts you down a little bit, can't it, Roy?
Right. And since he was given poorer and poorer accounts in the worst part of town to cover, he was on commission. So that directly affected his income, and that was of huge concern to him.
Well, understandable. Like you said, trying to meet his obligations with his child support. He had 2 sons and a daughter. And then on top of that, usually your home should be your refuge where you at least kind of, breathe and exhale to go face all the challenges of the world. And relax. And yet, with that place that he bought with the mold and just electrical challenges, I mean, really sounds like Nathan really just didn't have really a safe place at all in his life during that last season, Roy.
That's true. And when you fall into clinical depression, you are not thinking clearly. You're not thinking normally. You get into this whirlpool of downwardly spiraling negative thoughts, and you go over the same possibilities, the same solutions in your mind, none of which you're satisfied with, and you just keep thinking in that same endless circular pattern, and you don't sleep when you're clinically depressed, and you can't escape your thoughts. You're haunted by your thoughts 24/7, and you just want it to stop.
Well, I've been there before in a season of my life, so I can relate to what you're sharing there. Unfortunately, things happen in our lives, and things such as monumental with Nathan's life ending. Where were you when you found out the news that Nathan had taken his life? Where were you, Roy?
Well, I had lost my job, and I was also in a very deep depression. I had pretty much secluded myself from friends and family, and I was in that same condition of circular negative thought. I was trying desperately to resolve my own issues, and when Nathan was letting the family know, that he had these concerns, if I had been in my right state of mind, I would have gone to his aid, and I would have, done anything I could have to assist him. But since I was also suffering from a very deep depression, I was withdrawn, and I was just not in a frame of mind to where I could offer any assistance. And I've often thought that Satan likes to strike us while we're in our weakest moments and really crush us while we're down. And it was the perfect storm between him and me.
Well, I remember that season for you, and it was a really tough season. And I think for people that are listening, I want to encourage you a couple of things. Roy is so brave to come and share his story with his brother Nathan, who ended his life. And yet, two things that really came to me. Roy and I met a couple of nights ago, had dinner, and just kind of talked about this because it's a very sensitive and painful topic, as you could tell. And yet, I want to encourage you, if you need help, first to reach out, but also to keep reaching out. Sometimes people are in such a challenging season or challenging place like Roy was that, they're not capable, but to reach out to as many people as possible and know, because there is a person that would be willing to help. And also, if you need help, so you're saying, well, I don't want to ask for help. Well, please, please, please do ask for help. I want you to know you're not the only one. You hear the things that are going on in Nathan's life, and you can relate to that. And that's why we do Hope Is Here, to say, no, we want to stop things happening like what did with Nathan's life. And I know that just like Roy said with his family, they would have wanted to help, but things just didn't work out. But know that there is hope. And Roy, speaking of that, people that are listening right now that have lost hope and thinking about ending their life, what would you say to them right now?
That is a very negative thought process. It seems like a viable solution when you're clinically depressed, but truly that is not the solution. That is a permanent fix to a temporary problem. And Satan, he will really hit you when you're down, and he will fill your mind with the worst possible thoughts, and you have to be on guard for that. Suicide is not the solution. It transfers a lot of pain onto your remaining family members that goes on year after year after you're no longer in this world. And the very best thing to do is don't seclude yourself. Seek out your pastor, your close friends, relatives, and let them know that you're struggling and what you've been thinking of, and you're looking for a way out that is productive and leads to a path of restoration. But please do not let yourself be tempted to kill yourself.
Well, that's coming from a guy that lost his brother. How long has it been since Nathan's been passed, Roy?
He died in 2010.
2010. Yet there's tears in Roy's eyes as he talks about it, so the pain is still there. And I guess that's the next question I want to ask you, Roy. What impact with Nathan ending his life has it had on you, your family members, his kids? Just share a little about the ripple effect that's had.
Well, it's very serious and damaging. I blame myself for not realizing just how close to suicide he was and what he was thinking about. He had 3 beautiful children. He loved every one of them, and they loved him. But still, he was considering this terrible step of killing himself. And it's emotionally devastating. I'll never see him, never talk to him. I don't think his sons ever truly understood his action because they had never experienced clinical depression. And for your listeners, maybe a lot of the listeners don't know what clinical depression really is. It's not being sad. It's not having a bad day. It's not having a string of bad luck. It's a mental illness where you fall prey to some trigger in your life that has caused you to have a negative thought pattern and want to withdraw from daily living and not have any mental energy to do anything. You don't want to get dressed. You don't want to eat. You would love to sleep and forget about your problems, but most of the time when you're depressed, you can't sleep. So, you're in a real mental struggle. A good friend of mine who also struggles with depression said it's like being in hell with your back broke. And, it really is that severe. So, his children didn't understand. They still don't understand. And then people say, well, why would he do such a thing? He must have really had some huge monumental problems. And my mother blamed herself. She knew he needed some money, and she had planned to go over and give him some money, but she postponed her trip. And then that was about the same time frame when he committed suicide, and she really took it hard. She felt like if she had acted on her first impulse that perhaps she could have prevented it. But like I mentioned before, it's a permanent solution to only a temporary problem, and you're transferring pain onto your friends and family that will never go away. So it's a deep emotional wound that you'll never get over.
Well, if you're thinking about that, if you're at the place that Nathan was back in 2010, I'm begging you to get help, to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm hurting, I need some help, because you can hear the pain in Roy's voice. It's been almost 9 years, and yet the pain is still there. It most certainly is there. And it's been over 20 years ago, but I went through a really dark season in my own life and was borderline suicidal. And I had a counselor that told me, said, if you do that, you can just take a knife and just slash all your family members and close friends' face, because that'll be a scar that they will carry for the rest of their life. And is that an accurate description, Roy?
Pretty close. That's a good metaphor.
So, and what I want to do right now, you're like, okay, well, what do I do, Greg? There is a 1-800 number. You can call somebody right now that would be willing to talk to you. 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. So please reach out for help today. And gosh, we don't want anybody to end their life before it's their time to be with God. That is the whole reason why we started Hope is Here. So please reach out today and talk to somebody at 1-800-273-8255. My name's Greg Horn, and we're going to continue our conversation tomorrow with Roy Stewart about what it's like to deal with clinical depression. We'll see you tomorrow on Hope is Here.
Join Sunrise Children's Services Saturday, February 9th for a power-punched evening with boxing great George Foreman to celebrate Sunrise's 150th anniversary. Called Fighting for Hope, this evening is sure to inspire and encourage as George shares his testimony of failures and successes. For more information about Sunrise Children's Services and Fighting for Hope, go online to sunrise.org. That's sunrise.org, or call 800-456-1386.